Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Rock Your Reinvention, the show that gives you all the tips and tools you need to rock your reinvention by interviewing amazing women who have already been there and done that. So, I'm super excited to bring our guest on today. Her name is Kristen. We met, on Instagram probably several months ago.
Yeah.
And she has, I don't want to steal any thunder, but she has an amazing product and business. We're going to talk all about that today. But she saw my book, The Ins and Outs of My Vagina, and it was like, oh, okay, we're in the same world. Let's have a conversation, see if it makes sense to collaborate. And I knew I wanted to have her on the show from the first time I talked to her. So without any further ado, welcome, Kristen.
Thank you. I appreciate you, Karen. Thanks for having me. I'm glad we met. And it gives me hope for social media that sometimes you can just find a great person or make a great connection and you never would have otherwise. So
totally.
Love it for that.
It's nice when you can translate it into real life and take the relationship on from just social media. So cool. Well, why don't you just give us a little bit of background on you? Tell us who you are, where you're based out of, and then we'll jump into the interview.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So my name is Kristen. My last name is Miele. My husband is Italian. That's where that comes from. I am in Columbus, Ohio. I am originally from Chicagoland area. And my parents are still there. We go back to Chicago a good amount. But I just started my business. Really, I launched January 3rd. So I'm still 6 months young, still kind of a young business owner at this point, but I've been in the world of sex and sexuality and sexual health education for over a decade. So it's very comfortable and a good fit.
That's amazing. Well, so many of the women in this group also are at the very early stages of their business. Yeah. And sometimes I think that, you either are in the honeymoon phase and everything's great the first 6 months. You're like, this is amazing. Or you're like, this is harder than I thought it was going to be. And you want to throw your hands up in the air and walk away from it all. So hearing from other newbies, I think, is always helpful for anyone who's going through that process.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, I think there's good encouragement from people who have been in similar spaces. And I feel like it's been such a roller coaster since I've started. So
yes. Oh, and I don't know that I'm 3 years in almost, and I don't know that the roller coaster ends. I mean, really? You have your good days, you have your crap days, and it's just par for the course, maybe.
Yeah. I believe you.
So yeah, you're like, I'm sure. So let's go back to that moment in your life where you knew okay, I need a reinvention. I want out of this teaching world. You still love teaching, but you want to do it for yourself. What was going on? What were you feeling? What was happening?
Yeah, there was a lot of factors at play. So we moved abroad in 2019, the very beginning of 2019. Ooh. And we had just had a baby in 2018, and we sold all our stuff. We were renting a home, so we sold our cars and we went to our parents' home in Chicago, like I mentioned, and then flew to Honduras. And I never actually been there before. My husband had been many times, but the first time I set foot there was when I was moving there. And there was a lot of feelings about that, but overall, we really wanted to be doing work there. We were with a really good organization who is doing good work all over the world. Even just yesterday, I got an email from them that they were responding to the dam crisis in Ukraine.
Oh, wow.
And responding to wildfires and all sorts of things. So they're just wonderful. And we went there with them, and my husband was at a hospital, and I was at a children's center and a school, and also working at a local health department. We lived there for years, and then we came back for a training, and my husband had a very clear, prayer time where he was like, we're not going to go back. And we never went and got our things. We didn't go get our pets. We never said bye to anyone. It was almost, there was an aspect of just intense hardship with it. But it was very clear. And we came to find out that eventually, where we were, we didn't know this, of course, at the time, but where we were kind of started to fall apart a bit. A lot of the people who were working there ended up leaving, and there was some stuff going on with leadership and different agencies clashing, and just a lot of drama that honestly was totally unneeded. It was unnecessary.
Right.
But it didn't totally shock me either. There was just some traits in the leadership that were not great. And so anyway, so that ended up happening. So we would have ended up leaving anyway, but we just didn't know it at the time. And our stuff pretty much got disseminated to various people, and the pets, thankfully, like I was all worried about them, we're fine.
Yeah.
And we were here, and I was just having this crisis of like, well, what am I supposed to do now? I had 3 jobs there. I really thought we were going to live there for years and years and years and years. I thought I was going to like, basically raise my children there. And now we don't have anything, and we were back at home, and that felt weird. I'm in my 30s. I have a child. Like, what are we doing? And so we ended up coming back to Columbus, Ohio, because that's where my husband did medical training, and it really felt like an adult home for us. And so we came back, and my husband went to a conference that I didn't want to go to. And I was like, I'm going to do a little staycation, and I'm just going to focus on myself. And my daughter went to a cousin's house, and that's what I did. I stayed in. I went to a hotel to make it kind of different space and feel like I was treating myself, and actually was reading a book on like tips on how to write a book, because I have already written something, but it's not out there yet, like you. I have a lot to learn from you. But I was working on that, and then I was praying and really just considering, what am I supposed to be doing with my life? I was actually angry, and this is a corny quote, but I feel like it's applicable. It's something like, and maybe you've heard it before, rock bottom is a great foundation to start on.
Yes.
I felt like I was at like my rock bottom of just being angry. And like my husband had this clear vision that we were supposed to go back, but I never did. And all my Honduran friends were like, what are you doing? Like, why are you leaving us? And it just felt so crappy, frankly. And so I was literally like on the floor in this hotel room, like, what am I supposed to do with my life? And sex ed reclaimed, which is behind me, the sign.
I love it.
It just came like through prayer, and of just like, this is what you're supposed to do. Like, tape all the sex ed talks you've been doing for the last decade plus and put them online so people here in the States can see them. While I had been living in Honduras, there was a pandemic. I was pretty much in Honduras for most of that, and it wasn't that bad there, but it was crazy up here. And like, there were a ton of violence incidents, a ton of like school shootings, really sad. And I saw when I came back, like all these people were homeschooling that had never been homeschooling before. And I looked it up, and the growth of homeschoolers was just like exponential, for good reason. And I understood that. And I mean, I'm not homeschooling, but I just had this realization of like, I need to make my stuff accessible to whomever, whenever they want to get it. Additionally, there was these factors of, what is my kid being taught? How are they being taught? Do people have agendas, particularly about this topic, about sex, that I disagree with? And then what am I supposed to do with that? And I understood some of that fear. I thought some of it was like a little bit overblown, but some of it I completely got. I mean, the group I had been teaching sex ed with before I left the States was gone because people had voted not to send grant money that way. And I was in a grant money position because I think they were worried about what was being taught. And in reality, you could have taped what I was teaching and shown all the parents. I really don't think that parents would have disagreed at all. Like, it was pretty basic stuff. There was no side agenda. There wasn't a lot of delving into really, really intense topics that wasn't very factual. Like, we were super factual. But anyway, that was gone. So I couldn't even return to that anyway. So the recognition of, not only do I want this to be accessible to people, because people now are homeschooling, or there was a pandemic and that could happen again. God forbid. But like,
let's hope not. But yeah.
Anyway, but also like, people don't know what's being taught and they're afraid of that. And I kind of understand that. And so I'll make it available so that parents can watch with their kids or before their kids, whatever. And then a couple months after that, some things fell into place where it was just like videographer, editor, a website designer, all who were passionate about sex ed being taught to kids. And they had their own stories for that and reasoning for that. And it was really beautiful. And it was like, yes, confirmation. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. But in between, like you were mentioning earlier, all those confirmation ups, I had all these like, what am I doing? I've never started a business before. I have a kid. We're getting acclimated back to the States. Like, we don't have cars. We don't have a house. Like, we had to buy a house and cars and things. And now I'm starting a business, which costs money.
Right.
Like, is this right? So all the roller coaster, like all of it. I was all up on it, but there was enough confirmation and enough just enjoyment, like so much enjoyment of when I was actually teaching, what it was like, that I was like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. This was always what I was supposed to do. I just didn't know it.
Right. Yes. It is so true. I think there is like even now, like
Mhm.
I think I always knew someday I would be a life coach, but I just never
Mm.
put words to it.
Yeah.
And so I love how you're talking about, the universe is giving you like those signs and
Mhm.
confirmation and or God, right?
Yeah.
Depending on what everyone believes,
Yeah.
but is giving you that confirmation, like
Right.
lining up the right people in your
Right.
path. And it's like, oh no, I am supposed to keep going. Like it's not
Right.
necessarily going to be easy,
Yeah.
but all the pieces are going to fall into place if you just stay focused and believe and trust
Right.
yourself and take
Right.
the actions.
Right. Right. Completely agree with that.
I hope everyone too took note that she went to a hotel. She actually invested some money and time in her own self discovery. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of women overlook. We feel guilty spending money, especially as you said, you just come back to the
Right.
States, you don't have a job, you're trying to figure it all out. Like a lot of people would be afraid to spend that money on themselves. And
Yeah.
I'm telling you, that is like the best money ever spent because you now know what you're meant to be doing. You have that true purpose, and that is beautiful.
Yes. And I think when it's done right, like it is an investment into
Yeah.
into yourself and into your future and into your family, but you don't think of it like that. It looks like it's
Right.
selfish. And it doesn't help when like a partner is looking at it like it's selfish or something like that.
Yeah.
But it was super beautiful. Like it was super worth it.
Yeah.
So
No,
glad.
that's great.
Yeah.
So, how has your family reacted to your profession? I don't know. Are they like down with you teaching sex ed, or does it
Yeah.
make them uncomfortable? Are they supportive? I'm just curious because I think a lot of people are
Yeah.
sometimes fearful of following a path because they are afraid of what others are going to think.
Yeah. I think no matter what people do, no matter what women do, like there's going to be judgment and there's going to be a side eye and a critical attitude. And that's just because people don't understand your story and they don't really know you and they're not putting their self in your shoes. They don't have your childhood, they don't have your background, like whatever it is, they just don't get it.
Right.
And so I think no matter what that would happen. I mean, we all probably have stories of our moms or dads like disapproving of certain things that really were fine. And that's just more about them than it is about us. So, I mean, my husband is supportive. He's a physician, and so he really understands the necessity of good sex ed. He talks with his patients all the time. I mean, he's a pediatrician and internal medicine physician, but including with teens about like, safe practices, about what are they doing to deal with XYZ in their life? Like, are they going to this? Are they going to that? I mean, he's really like gets at it. I feel like a lot better than any of my pediatricians did when I was young.
Yeah.
And so he's supportive. I will say it's hard because I work from home. And when he doesn't work, I really want him to be 100% on with our kid. And, that does create, if I'm being honest, there's some tension there of like, but you're right there. And it's like, yeah, but I don't come bother you at work, and there's just that awkward,
Yes.
like, I work from home. So like I'm technically here and I'm technically available, but I'm not. I'm trying to write. I'm trying to work on stuff. I need my space. I can't be interrupted, especially if you're here. If you're not,
Right.
I'm going to be. And I have to learn how to deal with that and not like certainly not blame my child for interrupting me. It's not like her fault. She's not
Right.
have, that interpretation of like what I'm doing. But my husband, there has been some like real talk conversations of like, this is my kind of sacred space. You have to respect that for XYZ reason.
Oh,
In terms of my parents, I literally have it on my to-do list this month to talk to my mom. I'm not making this up about why, like, I don't blame her for never talking to me about sex because
right.
she started to listen to some of my podcasts, and I have all the podcasts I've been on my website. And she's listened to some of them, right? And I say in there, like, well, my parents never talked to me about sex, which is true. My
Right.
parents never did talk to me about sex, but I think she sees that as like, that was like totally her fault that she never did. And I know in reality, her parents never did, and she didn't know what to say. And she was just hoping church or school would fill in, which is like
Yeah.
so many parents even today. And so I want to talk to her and make sure she doesn't feel that blame. I'm not kidding you. I have it right on my to-do list right here to do this month because I'm going to see her in person. But it was weird. I think it was weird
Mhm.
when I became a sex ed teacher. I don't think my parents fully explained to people what I did. I think there was some shame around it just because it was a little bit of a shameful topic in our family.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, my sister and I both now kind of work in this field of sexual health. Hers is different, but it's interesting how that just happened for both of us. And we're both really passionate about it. But honestly, like my passion about it and when I talk about it, overrides kind of my parents' awkwardness about it.
Yes.
So I don't put too much stock in that. Like I really don't. I'm also, I don't know if this matters, but I'm like the baby of the family. I've always kind of done what I wanted. And so I never had this like super people pleasing with my parents. So it's just like more fuel for the fire for me. I'm like, no, I'm just gonna keep doing it. Like this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Right.
Mainly my focus is like, do I like doing this? Is this my passion? Is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Are other people confirming it? Are they like, yeah, you're like good at that. You can do that. That overrides all the parental or familial kind of stuff for me. It still matters. My relationships with them matter, but
Sure.
that's more important than like if my mom is like happy that I became a sex ed teacher, which
Right.
you know.
Yeah, she's not paying your bill. She's not living your life. She doesn't have to put her head on your pillow at night. So yeah, I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
So talk to me about any fears maybe that you had as you were starting this business. I think a lot of women allow those fears to hold them back. And so what fears did you have and how did you overcome them?
Yeah. I had fears about, I still have fears about, whoops, there was a light, about insecurity, about lights going out.
It's live, people. This is what happens.
It's real. I don't even know what's happening there. I still have fears. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I definitely struggle with just kind of the practical scheduling of everything. Like, how am I supposed to schedule this and still be a good mom? Which I really feel like doesn't happen to men as much as it does to women. It really
for
doesn't.
sure.
For sure. Yeah. And that's hard. And thankfully, I have a lot of friends, like most of my mom friends work. And so there's good kind of conversation that happens there in our friendships about that. But yeah, I had fears about money. I had fears about like tech type stuff.
Sure.
How do all these people afford to have their own domain and their website, and who do they pick and who should I go with? And I was looking into learning systems, and then I was talking to lawyers, and I was like, what am I doing? Like I had moments of being overwhelmed where I just didn't know what I had signed up for, so to speak.
Sure.
But I was like already in. And I really went step by step. Like I bought my domain pretty quickly. And then immediately I had that like buyer's remorse of, oh my goodness, like, what am I supposed to do with that? And I've definitely already made some oopsies along the way, and I'm probably going to make more from a business perspective. But I think also like I've thought I could take on things that I just can't. And so there's been some outsourcing of like, I am going to hire a marketing team. I'm not going to market my stuff all alone. I don't know what I'm doing in marketing. I have a public health background,
Right.
I've always worked in public health atmospheres. Like I can't do that. And so being able to say like, yeah, I need help with this, instead of being so afraid of asking. And I'm so thankful that I said, initially for my videos, I filmed them on my phone thinking that's what I would do.
Yes.
Really embarrassing already. And then like, thankfully this videographer was like, I have equipment. Like, can I film you? Like, look, my light just went out. Like it's dark in here now. I didn't do it alone, like,
right.
So anyway, so it's been good to like overcome some of my fears by being like, I need help. I'm going to hire these people.
Yeah.
And I will say, I'm glad that I'm doing this in my mid 30s as opposed to 21, because if I was 21, I probably would try to do it all. I really wouldn't be able to afford it because I would have no additional income or savings. I would have less life experience. And so it actually makes more sense that I'm doing this now. But a part of me is like, well, then what have I been doing? Like, have I been wasting my time? But no, I was still figuring out who I was and still figuring out what I like to do and gaining some life experience. I've taught sex ed in different countries and like thousands of settings. That wouldn't have happened if I had just gone right off the bat with this business at 22.
Right.
There was really no motivator for me to do it then. So I'm really glad actually it was in my mid 30s that this has happened, because it's made a lot of sense in terms of capability. Like, what am I able to do? What do I need to pay other people to do? And how am I going to learn?
I have seen that so much even in my own life. Like I started my book, I tell people all the time, in 2009. And then it was 10 years before I picked it up again and decided, no, I'm actually going to finish this. But that book would not have been nearly as complete and comprehensive if I had done it in 2009, because so many of my experiences would have been left out and I wouldn't have had the same realizations and appreciation for those experiences. So I always say, like, this book would have been a totally different book and probably not as well received or as good or funny if I had done it then. So I just think these things all happen at the right time, exactly the way that they're supposed to.
Yeah, I agree. And there's a lot of peace in that.
Yes. Oh, so much peace.
Like, instead of being like, oh, why didn't I publish this in 2010, 11, 12? It's like, oh no, I can look back and see hindsight 2020. Like, this is what needed to happen. So great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. I wanted to circle back to something else you said, because it's summer now, the kids are out of school, and I can totally relate to this whole not battle, I don't know if that's right word, but conflict with your husband. I had to have a little come to Jesus moment with my husband not that long ago. And I was like, you cannot call me 3 times a day. I don't need an update on what electrical calls you went on today. I'm not trying to be a jerk. I would love to catch up with you tonight, and you can tell me all about that, service partner check, all this language that he uses. Right. And that will be fantastic. But you never called me like this when I was in a corporate job. Why do you do it now? You think I'm just home doing nothing? I'm like, no, I'm sorry. I'm trying to run a business. And that doesn't mean talking to you 3 times a day.
Right.
And so we really had to have like this, okay, boundaries, text me first. Like, I let him know at 11:30, I will be on calls from 12 until 2. Do not call me or any of that. Okay. So he calls me at 11:52. It's like, I just want to check in before your calls. I'm like, okay. We have a quick chat. But it's hard to set those boundaries.
It is. Yeah.
So how have you been doing this and keeping your priorities straight, while you've got your kids at home? And is there any strategies that you have found are starting to work for you?
This is not going to be what people expect here, but I would say one of my strategies is grace, like giving myself some grace. Like, sometimes I let my daughter, while I do these calls and she's home, watch a movie. Like, big whoop. You know what I mean? Yeah, I'm not paying attention to her. She's watching a movie or she's watching her little tablet, but like, that's okay. Like, I watched TV growing up. It didn't like ruin my life. So I give myself some grace. I kind of recognize my responses to things and like what that means for me. Like, if I'm responding to her or him in a frustrated manner or like mad, why? What's kind of happening in there? And I will say, my husband and I have really intentional, good conversation like every night. I mean, really, seriously, practically every night we talk. And I feel like that's happened a lot more since in the past few years, partially because just so many things are happening. And that almost seems like, well, if a lot's going on and it's a busy season, then how do you have time for that? But we like don't watch TV together. We like do that instead. And that's been really helpful for setting expectations, boundaries, talking about our passions and what we're doing and his work, my work. Additionally, I set monthly goals. I have like a list of monthly goals, which I don't complete all of them. But when I look back and see how many I did, that brings me joy. Like, that makes me proud and happy that I'm able to do that. And some of the goals are a little bit reach. Some are more like, I know I have to get those done. And some are more, this would be great to do. And it's really fun actually to see like what I'm able to accomplish. Cause I mean, as you know, Karen, like we're alone. Like, we're by ourselves. Like, we don't have a team holding us accountable. This is not corporate life. There's not some boss or supervisor. And so there is that aspect of like, okay, how am I going to know that I'm making progress, that I'm doing what I need to be doing, that I'm checking in with the right people, that I'm making certain whatever connections or necessary kind of professional outreach? Like, where is that happening and how can I see my own progress and get to see what comes from that? And that's really fun, actually. So I think making monthly goals, like having intentional conversations with my husband, giving myself grace has been good. But frankly, I'm still probably learning how to manage home life, mom life, work life. But I like it.
Yeah. No, I know. And I think those are great tips. I mean, Grace, it sounds so simple, but really we put so much of the pressure on ourselves. Exactly. I make so many deadlines for myself. And then and deadlines are great. We need to do that. So we do hold ourselves accountable, but I need to look at the deadline and go, okay, if this slips a week, is it going to be make or break? Is my whole business going to tank because I didn't get that lead magnet up on my website by 6 p.m. on Friday? Probably not. Probably not going to make it. What's one more week? Okay. but my kid needs me. He's sick or this
Yeah.
happened or whatever. Let me just go focus on what the main thing is right now,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
just reminding myself why I went to business and into business for myself in the first place, right? So I could be more present with them.
Yes. And like you've said, like you don't really work Fridays. Like there's that balance of like what works for your family, because at the end of the day, your family is the most important. But my business helps me to be a better mom and a better wife because I love doing this. This gives me so much passion, energy, and excitement. And so and that does look different for different families. How do I balance this with that, but still be very clear that this is really important to me?
Yeah.
And obviously nobody wants to fail. And so making those goals to get to a certain place is a great thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Love that. So maybe just tell us, I want to just talk a little bit more about the business.
Sure.
So what would you say makes you different from other sex educators on the market?
That's a great question. I did a lot of market research after I had this initial prototype of this vision of what sex ed reclaimed would be, because I wanted to make sure, like, well, is that already out there? Because then that's a bit silly.
Right.
And I could not find anything. And I mean, I already knew there probably wasn't anything because I've really been looking for years. So, and just being honest, I would say the biggest sex educator, besides what I believe porn is really the biggest sex educator, but after which we can all agree that that's not good sex education for children. The next one is probably Planned Parenthood. And there's so many views and opinions and thoughts about Planned Parenthood. Some are not great, meaning that they're not really based in much, and others are valid. And it's all up in the air. As a sex educator, I appreciate how much care that they give to people, but I understand that people have different places they're coming from, and Planned Parenthood is almost like a loaded statement now.
Right.
And then recognizing that in addition to them, a lot of schools don't even really do sex ed very well because every state has different guidelines, different policies, different requirements. And so it's honestly confusing state to state. I mean, there is still policy that says you need to teach about venereal diseases. Tell me the last time you heard somebody say venereal diseases who wasn't like 80 years old. Or like, oh, you can talk about condoms, but you can't talk about birth control. It's just like every state is like different, and then break it down to every school. And then there's charter schools and there's faith-based schools. And I mean, it is hard to understand even for me in this field of what's what and who's doing what. And so making sex ed and robust, I have over 80 videos and there's a ton of topics for kids all across the age spectrum of, toddler to graduating high school. There's nothing like that out there. I can't find anything like that out there except for, like I said, maybe, Planned Parenthood has some free resources on their website for people, and a lot of schools do use them. But if you want to be doing it in the home, if you want to know a little bit about what your kid's learning, if you just want to have those additional conversations, if you want to talk with your family about, well, what are pronouns and why are so many people talking about them? What is Pride Month and why are so many people talking about this, and how do we talk about this? And what does that matter for our health? And does it? And, like those are conversations that are great to have, but some people just don't have the language to do so. Their parents, like I alluded to earlier, never talked to them. Maybe their schools never did. The only thing I remember from school is some HIV education. Like that was it. So, and I went to a really good public school outside of Chicago. And so for people to kind of look back and say, well, I don't know how to talk about this because nobody ever gave me the language, but I want to talk about it with my kid because sex and sexuality stuff is like everywhere and porn is everywhere, but I just don't know how. It's like, that's why sex ed reclaimed exists. I love sex ed, and I wanted to reclaim it, to really make it something that is not so like scary and what's her agenda and what's his agenda and what are they doing, but rather like accessible. Like, here, have it. Have all the sex ed I've ever taught for these age groups at age appropriate levels with like language that's age appropriate. Take it all. And my curriculum is always lifetime access. And even this month, I'm filming more content for the website. And so there's going to be more videos coming into those curriculum, not only for kids, but I have parent videos too. So I will say another thing that makes me different is I do have a faith background. And so I don't shy away from talking about God. I actually have people who are Sikh who use my curriculum, and they're like, yeah, we're not really like I don't know. I don't think they're super religious about being Sikh, but it's part of their cultural narrative. And so they watch my stuff, and then they have their own kind of discussions after about how their faith plays into it. So
sure. Well, I've used the content and I thought it was awesome. I mean, my boys seriously were like, when can we watch the next video? They learned so much. They're like, wow, the uterus gets that big when you have a baby. Like things they had no idea about. Like, oh, you don't take out a tampon to pee. No, we don't have to do that. It's a different whole, like just explaining all these things. And it's like, you could see the light bulbs going off. And I'm just like, oh, you're not going to be clueless. And, you know, and I did feel like it was very age appropriate. And even some of the videos that were for the younger ages, I let them watch a few and they were like, oh, wow, I never thought about that. That was a really good video. And I was like, oh, okay. Like we kind of skipped over some of this stuff when you were younger. We didn't talk about bad images on phones or certain things. And they found it really helpful. So I think what you're doing is amazing. And I know that it is touching so many lives. Oh God, we could talk forever. I know we're running out of time, but I want to make sure that we also get like, what is your biggest tip for women who are watching and they're like, crap, I haven't done any sex ed with my kids yet. Like, what would you say to them?
I would say, don't fret. I totally understand. I would say that the biggest tip I can give, besides I have curriculum for you can use in your families, is to use opportunities around you. That's always a big tip I give. So for example, you're driving somewhere and there's a big billboard and your kids can read and, you know, the billboard's about abortion or about sex or about, I don't know, gay marriage, whatever. And you have a conversation about, hey, did you see that billboard? You know, and then what did it say? What do we believe about that? Or what do you think about that? Or do you know another couple at school who's gay? Or do you have any friends who are gay? Or have you ever heard of abortions before? Really, it's just kind of figuring out, if you've never talked to them, like, what do they know already?
Because where are they at?
Exactly. I always have parents say, oh, my kids are so innocent. They really don't know. I have parents tell me that for whatever reason all the time. Guess what? It's not really true. Your kids actually know a lot more than you think. They just don't want to talk about it with you, or they don't know how to talk about it with you, or they don't know what it means in their brain yet. So they've pushed it away. And, you know, kids are exposed to a lot of different things in our world that even we weren't when we were young. And so really starting to just use opportunities around you. You're watching a show or a movie and there's some sort of allusion to sexuality or sex or dating or, you know, internet safety type stuff, asking them like, have you ever heard of that before? Have you ever seen that before? Do you know anybody at school? Do you have anybody at whatever? And really engaging like in conversation with them, and not just yes or no questions, but like the why and the how and the what, to see where they're at. And if they shut down when you do that, keep doing it. And that shows your children that you are there to talk about it and you're not afraid to, and you don't think it's embarrassing or shameful.
Right.
Even if you do a little bit, you're open to it, you know? And so that way they're coming to you instead of like Googling stuff and ending up in places that you never really wanted them to be on anyway.
Oh, such a good tip. And it's never too young to start. I mean, your content is all the way down to toddlers and teaching them, you know, appropriate touching. And so they really know how to put up those boundaries and alert you if someone is touching them in a way that they shouldn't be. So I think that's, you know, I just echo that because I'm very passionate. I do a lot of work around like sex trafficking and, you know, they get to these kids 12, 13 years old and they're getting them on the phones, you know, and these kids have not been talked to about why you don't give your address or, you know, you don't
send images.
Yes, all those things.
Even if you're dating the boy, quote unquote, you know, you don't, I mean, I've heard horror stories of seemingly safe kids in safe areas that start dating a boy. And really it was to start trafficking them into a certain situation, and boys or girls. And it's just like crazy.
It's terrifying.
Yeah. So really having open conversations where you're really talking and getting at all the things is super helpful.
Yeah. So I would love for you to have the last word. If anybody's watching and they're thinking about reinventing their life, they know they want to make a change, but they don't know how to get started. What would you tell them to do first?
Ooh, for me, it was pray. That was really important. I also just thought of the words, do it, like just do it.
Right.
Start to put some feelers out, see what's out there. Get at it. Like you don't, even if you think like, oh no, the market's really saturated. Like there's so many people doing X, Y, Z. There's so many people that still need help, that still need connection. 20 influencers can't reach everyone. Like there needs to, and not that people want to be an influencer, but like there needs to be a lot of people working in these fields. A lot of people, like you mentioned, human trafficking, fighting human trafficking. It's not so much about competition to me as it is about like community and like really working together, like meeting people where they are. And so I would say like pray about it, do it, put out some feelers, network like crazy. Like there's probably a lot of people in your network that you don't even like fully realize would want to do that or help you with that, or are connected to somebody else. Like we're all separated by, what is it, 4
6
degrees
degrees or something.
yeah. Like you never know who you know until you really start to think about it.
Yeah.
And process that. So yeah, pray about it. Journal. I like journaling. I like writing stuff out. It helps me to see where I was too. Really helps me be grateful. So that would be my advice.
I love it. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us today. And where can people find you? Let us know your website and things and your social handles.
Sure. So my website is sexedreclaimed.com. So you can go on that and see everything basically that I've been doing and that I've been up to. Additionally, my handles are all Sex Ed Reclaimed as well. So whether that's on Instagram, I'm on TikTok, Facebook, I have a page, and of course, and then yeah, I think that covers it. I'm on LinkedIn, things like that. But I'm like super responsive. So even if you go on my contact form, and then I want to tell you, Karen, I didn't tell you this before, but I would love to offer like anybody in the Boss Babes group a 30% off promo code, because I'm just like so excited for women really reclaiming, as is in my title, kind of themselves and their passions and what they want to do. So I will send you that, and that way you can post about it. But a 30% off for just if women are wanting to talk to their kids about sex or know that they need to, but just aren't sure how, that will give you a promo code to get a percentage off of the curriculum.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you. You're so gracious. We love you.
Oh.
It's been so fun having you here. If anyone wants to get in touch with Kristen, she's in our group, Successful Working Women Rocking Reinvention. So make sure you reach out to her. We'll get you the codes if you're interested in checking out the curriculum. I love it. It's been great for our family. But, check it out, see what works for you. And I hope you all get out there and rock your own reinvention. You got this. Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you.